everybody is doing fabulous today. I don't know where anybody is really. I guess we're all kind of across Canada. Yeah, I am in gray Toronto again, and I'm getting really sick of this gray that we have in Toronto every single day and the rain. At this point, I feel like I should just move out west where it's also gray, but at least you get the nice mountains and everything else like that. Okay, so we are, what time is it? 1:02. I know that we've got a couple of other people kind of trickling in here. So I will get started. My name is Alana Abramsky. I run the coaching program with Enriched Academy. And before we go into this webinar on how we are going to help you kind of eliminate your debt, I just want to go through a disclosure to begin with. We've prepared this material for informational and educational purposes only. It should not be relied on for tax, legal, investment, insurance, or accounting advice. Your personal financial situation is unique, and any information and advice obtained through Enriched Academy may not be appropriate for your situation. Accordingly, before making any final decisions or implementing any financial strategies, you should obtain additional information and advice from a certified financial planner or other financial professionals regarding your individual financial circumstances. So I know particularly we have a few individuals here today that are here to help, but I just want to kind of talk to all of you a little bit about just SISIP Financial and what you receive with SISIP Financial as well. So as a CAF member, veteran, and family, you have exclusive access to SISIP Financial. There are aspects of finances that can be really complex. So think about, tax efficient strategies, choices around RRSP versus TFSA, income security, etc. And seeking professional advice to help navigate your financial options and find the right solutions for you and your goals is going to be the best course of action to provide you with the best valuable insights for your specific situation. SISIP offers financial advice, including education series such as this one, and also personalized insurance, financial planning, and investment advice and solutions. So SISIP is dedicated specifically to CAF members, veterans, and your family members. This means that SISIP understands the CAF lifestyle. They understand your pay and allowances. They know your pension. They know what a posting is, a DAG, a release, and they know what financial impacts these can have and how to help you plan accordingly. SISIP is a social enterprise. This means we exist to serve you, our members, period. Regular financial institutions and banks are designed to maximize profits for shareholders, and this can impact the service and advice their customers receive. As a social enterprise at SISIP, we provide unbiased advice and solutions that are in your best interest. So when members get their insurance and investments with SISIP Financial, they do earn some revenue, but that revenue goes towards paying SISIP Financial expenses, such as the salaries of their financial professionals. So any remaining revenue is invested in programs and services on bases and wings. And since 2015, SISIP Financial has contributed over $150 million to these programs. So SISIP advisors are located at bases and wings across Canada. They are integrated into the CAF community. So they understand the military lifestyle, and they are here to serve you and your family with unbiased advice at every stage of your career, including releasing from the CAF and retirement. Over 150,000 members trust SISIP Financial to insure them and their families. Over 11,000 turn to SISIP for financial planning and investment advice. And in addition, SISIP is here to support the 8,600 members in the counseling program, working together to establish a budget that works for them or when needed, providing acute financial relief together with support our troops. So if you do need any assistance at all with anything that we are going to talk about today, SISIP Financial is here for you and they are here to help you. So please take advantage of that. All right, so we are going to get started, and in this educational webinar, we are going to talk to you about a debt elimination action plan. This is something that we have put together over at Enriched Academy, which we know works. We use this with, a lot of our clients. We provide a lot of education to our clients, and we're going to go through a couple of different secrets to explain to you you can get rid of that debt once and for all. So the first thing that we're going to talk about actually is what causes debt. We need to understand first and foremost what causes debt. And typically what we see at the end of the day is that first and foremost, there's a lack of financial literacy in our country. I guess I should probably say in the entire world. But specifically in Canada, because we are Canadian and this is where we live, we often find that the majority of people who are in debt is just a lack of financial literacy and not a great, an efficient system of managing your finances at the end of the day. However, in saying that, there are people out there who do not make a lot of money, but who are also very good at managing their money, and they're able to amass a large net worth. And so I'm sure a lot of you remember, maybe you don't remember, but this was a couple of years ago. I think it was in 2015 actually is what it says here, that a janitor in the US had amassed an $8 million fortune, and his family didn't find out about it until after he had passed away. He had lived this life as a janitor at a school, and he started investing in the stock market at a very young age, I think when he first got his job. And so this is one of the telltale signs of that. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much money that you make, it's how you manage your money, right? And we see this time and time again with a lot of our clients who might be, in real estate. They make a lot of money every single year. They have large commission checks coming in. Just people who are, CEOs. We have people from every walk of life that we have seen before. And the difference is that when you make money and you manage your money correctly, you will often not get into that debt cycle, right? Because when you know what is happening to your money at the end of every single day or every week, and you are very mindful of how you're spending your money, you don't typically get into that debt cycle. But for those of you who are in that debt cycle, we're going to talk about some strategies on how to get out of it once and for all. Because at some point and another, there will be a time where you are in a little bit of debt, whether you have a mortgage or you've got some credit card debt or whatever else. But I want all of you to think about right now, in the past 12 months, what percentage of your time, energy, and attention went towards making money versus managing money? So just think about that for all of you here. And I just want to remind you that when you manage your money properly, and when you can spend about a half hour to an hour a week on managing your money, you all go to work every single day to get that paycheck. So we need to make sure that we're actually managing it at the end of the day, because it is number one to living that debt-free lifestyle. Now, let's talk about one of the biggest things where people are going to see the debt cycle continue to build on itself time and time again. It's typically momentum. And when you have momentum and you have compound interest, it can be either a recipe for disaster, which we're going to take a look at, and this is how debt can compound on itself time and time again, or it can go the opposite way, and you can actually start to use compound interest in your favor, right? And that's how you can really start to build wealth over time. So when we talk about momentum, it's very much like if you see a train, kind of coming into the train station, and it's coming in very, very slowly, and then you want to get somewhere, and you want to get to your next destination, and it gets there, that momentum starts building up. This is exactly, we need to look at the momentum of everything. So if how many of you in here have felt that flow, where everything is going right, it's going smoothly, but on the flip side, we also have negative momentum, right? So that's when basically, when it rains, it pours. So you take one step forward, but then, you feel like you're falling 10 steps back. And that happens to all of us throughout different periods of our life, right? Now, that controlling that momentum is critical for getting out and staying out of debt. So let's first talk about compound interest, right? We know obviously what momentum is, but if we don't know what compound interest is, this is where it's going to have an effect on, this is that first part of the financial literacy that we really need to understand. So Compound interest basically is it's as Mr. Albert Einstein said, he says it's the eighth wonder of the world. Those that understand it earn it, and those that do not understand it pay it. Now, when you have negative momentum and compound interest, this, as I mentioned before, is a recipe for disaster. And I want to talk to you about the story of Tyler. Tyler was actually one of our first clients that came in and worked with us at Enriched Academy. Tyler had about $40,000 of credit card debt when he came in to work with us at EA, and he was paying just shy of $8,000 a year just in interest that he was paying. Now, Tyler had just been spending frivolously. He wasn't really thinking about the repercussions of spending so much money. And if you actually take the amount of money that he was spending in interest, that $40,000 of debt was not just $8,000 in interest, because that interest compounds on itself time and time again. So when you have compound interest, basically what happens is when you are charged interest, and that interest then compounds on the original amount, right? So if you're paying 20% or you're trying to pay off 20% of your credit card and you're not even touching the principal amount every single month, that interest is just compounding on the principal amount. And that's how it's really difficult to get out of credit card debt, right? Because at 20% interest, if that's compounding at the end of every single day, which most credit card interest does, and we can talk about that in a little bit, it gets very expensive at the end of the day. So we have this debt crusher tool in the online portal, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit, because you all will have access to the SISIP educational portal. And the debt crusher tool is within there, and you can actually start to use that for your own debts, just to see exactly how much interest you're going to be paying when you take that compound interest factor into consideration. Now, when you're going through this, and if you are somebody who you want to get rid of your debt once and for all, there's going to be a couple of things that we need to take a look at first, and a couple of worksheets that I would suggest all of you go through on your SISIP portal, because what we basically want to do here is we want to transition where our money is going to, and think about what is more of a priority to us, right? Because if you make debt reduction a priority, it's going to be, you will get rid of your debt. You just need to say no to a couple of things in the meantime, right? There's two ways basically to get out of debt. You put more money towards those debt, and you continue to live, you continue to live the life that, or sorry, you cut back in some of the areas that you are spending money on right now that may not be a priority to you, and you then reallocate that money towards your debt. Or you go out and get an extra job and you have more income coming in and you continue to live the life that you want, right? I am of the basis of learning first and foremost, and then also not having to go out and get another job if you don't have to, right? There's lots of people that we have seen who have gone through and been able to reduce their debt just by making a couple of small changes so that they can, alleviate $300-400 a month and then put it against their debt, right? And get rid of it that much faster. So the cool thing about this debt crusher is that if you go through, a budgeting activity or something like that, and you find that you can actually save yourself, $100 every single month by cutting your cable bill or calling your cell phone provider and getting a better deal on your cell phone or something like that, you can put that additional payment towards the debt that you want to get rid of once and for all into the debt crusher. It'll actually calculate how much interest you are going to save over the lifetime of that debt, and also what your new debt-free date is. So this is a really awesome tool for all of you to use. It is in your SISIP financial dashboard, and I'm going to talk about in a second how you can sign up for that. But if we were looking back at somebody like Tyler and we looked at the debt crusher tool, if Tyler only had $800 that he was putting towards this $40,000 credit card that he had, the amount of money that was going to interest because of that compounding interest factor is 83%, which means that only 17% was going to the principal, right? So he had all of this interest and he was barely touching the principal, right? And so that's where we needed to make a change. And he didn't really realize this until he sat down with a financial coach and actually ran the numbers. So for those of you who want to have access to that debt crusher tool and many other online courses as part of the pilot project that gives you access to that SISIP portal, you can actually scan this QR code here and it'll take you to a forms link and you can sign up to get access to that debt crusher tool along with many other online courses that we have as well. So let's talk about what Tyler did, right? Working with a financial consultant, we actually got Tyler on a plan where he could finally manage his debt and get rid of it once and for all. So basically what we did was we looked at a couple of different debt consolidation methods, which I'm going to talk about in a couple of minutes. We actually used some of those balance transfer credit cards that are available on the market, which can work for a lot of people so long as you have a plan in place. We also put Tyler on an aggressive budget, and he was very hardcore about wanting to get rid of this debt once and for all. And by just making some small adjustments, we were actually able to get his interest rate down at 0%. And he saved himself $8,000 in interest or $7,700 in interest over the course of a year. Now, that $7,700 that he is now saving can go towards the principal. And with him having his plan and getting on an aggressive budget, he was actually able to pay off his $40,000 of credit card debt within a year and a half. So it was pretty cool to see. And this is a testimonial from Tyler. He says, I was paying $7,796 a year in credit card interest. I reduced that to $0, which is helping me pay off my debt faster than I ever could have imagined. Thank you to the Enriched Academy team for allowing me to see the alternatives. So how do we turn negative momentum into positive momentum? I just want to explain to everybody that you're not alone in this, right? Anybody can get out of debt, and this is not a life sentence. So sometimes you're going to feel overwhelmed, and this is going to turn into different frustrations. And when you're frustrated, it's hard to make smart decisions. And this is why SISIP Financial is here for you, to have somebody that you can go and talk to about, how can you better your financial situation. So all it really takes is one step and one idea and one strategy that can change your momentum from negative to positive. And one decision can set you on the path to living that debt-free life. So one of the reasons that debt feels like a never-ending cycle is because when you are fighting against negative momentum and compound interest, it truly is an impossible fight to win. So what I would suggest to all of you, if you do have any debts at home, you have credit card debt, line of credit debt, something like that, first take a look at your statements or the statement that you received when you first got that debt vehicle, and just read the fine print. I know there's obviously a ton of fine print in these documents, but just read the fine print so that you can understand how your debt is actually compounded. So for credit cards, for example, most debt, credit cards and lines of credits and home equity lines of credits, most debt is compounded at the end of every single day, right? And if your interest is compounding at the end of every single day, it's really hard to get out of that debt because people just think, oh, I'm just going to put the minimum payment on my credit card, but that's barely going to touch the principal, right? So the first thing is just educating yourself on the debt that you have, and then going one step further and figuring out that plan of how to get rid of it once and for all. Let's take a look at a mortgage example, right? These are really great examples to take a look at because a lot of people own homes. But if you were to take a mortgage that you had a $500,000 mortgage with, one of your traditional banks or credit union or whatever you're using, and you had an interest rate of 7%, and your monthly payments were $3,500, over a 25-year amortization period, the total payments that you would be paying would be $1,050,623, and roughly $550 of that is going to interest, right? And that's that compounding interest factor. So it's really important to understand how your debts compound interest, and then understand how you can get rid of them once and for all. So this is usually what we see, and this is the second secret that we really need to understand, is how do we derail that debt cycle? So, time and time again, we see people who they get paid, and then all of their money is basically going to bills to pay off bills. and then they've got some interest on their debts that they have to pay off as well. And then they're trying to save up for an emergency fund, right? So there's nowhere in here that goes to wealth building, right? Putting money into your investment accounts, your registered accounts, those accounts that are going to help you build more passive income. So we need to derail the debt cycle. Now, if this does not get addressed, it will not end. Typically, people who are in this debt cycle they're like hamsters on a wheel, right? They haven't tried to do anything else over the last little while. And sometimes all it takes is talking to somebody about your situation and figuring out a better way that you can put a plan together, right? Because we don't want all of you to continue to live this life where you feel one of these things. So if you took a look at this, like what of these words would best describe your debt, right? I think a lot of people would probably feel very overwhelmed and stressed. There's a ton of frustration that goes along just because there's a lack of financial literacy. Some people get very frustrated with having this debt, and there's a lot of shame that goes with it. So don't feel like you are alone, and don't feel like that there isn't a way out of this, because there very much is. Really, all I want to say is that 1% change compounded will help you live a debt-free life. So let's talk about the debt crusher tool a little bit more in a little bit more detail, right? Because all of you who are here, once you sign up for that SISIP financial portal and you use the debt crusher tool, it's going to be very eye-opening for you. So what I would suggest before going through that debt crusher tool is just take the debts that you have and write down basically how much of your debt do you still owe. So what principal do you owe? What's the interest rate that you were paying or on that debt? And then also, what's the minimum payment, or what are you trying to pay against that debt every single month, right? That is going to be your first step, is just getting those numbers and having them ready. The second thing I would suggest you do is actually go through a budget activity and figure out, with the money that you have coming in and all of the expenses that you have going out, do you actually have any money left over at the end of every single month in order to put more money against your debts? If you don't, this is the first place that you want to start, right? Because if you are spending more than what you earn, you are just going to consistently and constantly get into debt, right? That's probably how your debt started in the first place. Now, there is a way out of this, right? And this is really where you have to kind of start either, looking at each of your expenses with a fine-tooth comb. We have seen clients who have cut back in their spending by $4,400 a month because they're very focused on getting rid of their debt. But this is where you want to balance out your budget. And you actually want to be in the green every single month with your budget so that you have more money coming in than you have money going out, right? And when you have more money coming in than money going out, if you have a surplus at the end of every single month, this is when the debt crusher tool gets really exciting to use. Not saying you should, everybody who has any kind of debt should use the debt crusher, but if you're wanting to get rid of that debt faster than you ever imagined, then at some point you're going to have to go through your spending habits and see if there's anywhere that you can cut back. So in this example, we had an extra $448 that we just kind of had as a surplus. So I'm going to show you right now how to actually use the debt crusher tool. So you're going to sign into your SISIP portal. It's going to look a little bit like this, and you are going to go into your debt crusher tool. So it's going to look a little bit like this once you get in there. So you're going to click the Let's Begin button. And this is where you're going to go through and you're going to add in your first debt. Now, when you add in that first debt, as I mentioned, you're going to start off with just one debt at a time, just to kind of see what happens with each of those debts. So in this example, I have a BMO line of credit. It's a personal line of credit, and I'm paying 7.95% of it right now. And the amount that I have left over is $10,837, and I'm making $299 a month on there. That's just the minimum amount that I'm being asked to pay. And that is actually what I am paying every single month. So I'm going to type that into the debt crusher tool, and then I'm going to click the Understand My Debt. And what's going to happen basically is that it's going to calculate using that compound interest factor and everything else like that. It is going to calculate that I will have spent an extra $1,597 in interest above and beyond that $10,837 of debt that I had. And then it'll tell me basically my debt-free date, right? So if I continue to make my $299 a month in payments, I would be debt-free by X date. So what we want to do then, it's going to take you to your second page, and it's going to show you how much monthly interest that you are paying. And then what we want to do is we want to crush your debt. Now, the way that we do this basically is if we have any extra money. So as we discussed before, I had an extra $400 that I could put towards something, right? I went through my budget. I saw I had X amount of dollars going to my debt. You can type in that number. I'm just going to use $200 as an example here. You can put in that $200 and it'll show you how much more in interest that you have saved and the amount of months of payment that you are saving as well. So that is really cool to take a look at. And for everybody who has, any extra money that you have, to put against your any of those debts, you can go through this and it'll show you exactly what kind of huge adjustment that it's been making on the interest that you are paying in that debt crushing tool. So as I mentioned, go through a budget activity, see how much money you have coming in, see how much money you have going out, and see if there's anywhere that you can cut back or realign your income so that you are focused on getting rid of this priority debt once and for all. But in this example, I took an extra $300 every month and I'm applying it to my personal line of credit. And then I've got an extra 148, 150 bucks a month that I'm going to put into an emergency account just in case something happens, right? So that's the third secret that we want to go through is how do we use that debt pressure tool? The fourth secret is lowering your interest payments with debt consolidation. So what is debt consolidation? This is a principle where you use a new loan to pay off a number of loans and debts. Some advantages are for people that it actually simplifies your finances and it will make your debt more manageable, and it will often save you money if you're obviously consolidating higher interest debts into lower interest loans. Some of these disadvantages is that from a mental standpoint is that when people see that they have zero balance on a line of credit or something, is that if you don't have a plan in place, you could rack up that debt again, whereby, we've seen clients before who, every time they go to refinance their mortgage, they're just refinancing and adding their credit cards or their lines of credits onto their mortgage, right? And then what they're doing is they're racking up their credit cards and their lines of credits again until their mortgage comes up for renewal, right? So you're just racking up more debt, throwing it on your mortgage, and then you're racking up more debt over here. So you're going to be spending more money in interest over the long term. Another disadvantage sometimes is that debt consolidation loans, depending on where you go, they do come with very high interest rates. So you always want to read the fine print. So there's a couple of debt consolidation methods that you can look into, and we're going to talk about these 5 right now. Now, if one of these are something that you maybe are interested in, I would say always read the fine print and get the facts. And whenever you can, obviously talk to somebody who's a little bit more educated in this field, right? Because what you don't want to do is just go ahead and get something and then it ends up biting you in the butt at the end of the day. Okay, so let's talk about a home equity line of credit. So the first one we're going to talk about, a HELOC, as we like to call it. This is where you can easily access the money that you have built up in the equity of your home. Now, you will have to talk to a financial institution in order to get a home equity line of credit set up for you. But I'll show you a calculation in a second to show how much you can actually gain access to in the equity of your home. Now, an advantage is that you only pay interest on the amount of money that you use on a home equity line of credit. And because it's secured against your house, it often comes with lower interest rates than lines of credits and credit cards, unsecured lines of credits and credit cards. So it is a secured line of credit because the security is your house at the end of the day. A big disadvantage of this is because a home equity line of credit is secured against your house, if you don't pay that home equity line of credit, you could potentially go through a possible foreclosure if you don't pay off that home equity line of credit because it is secured against your house. And once again, there's a potential to rack up more debt. So let's take a look at how much equity that you can leverage in your house. So if the value of your home is $500,000, a lot of financial institutions will allow you to refinance up to 80%. Some of them are changing to 60%. So you really want to talk to the person who's dealing with your finances. So in this example, if I could leverage 80% of the value of my home, the maximum refinance limit I could hit would be $400,000, right? Now, if my mortgage is $300,000, I have $100,000 of equity available in my house. And I can take that out in the form, it's basically like taking out a personal line of credit, except it comes with a lower interest rate because it does have the security of your house. Now, second is a personal line of credit. The advantages of this is that it's flexible with lower rates than credit cards. And once again, you only pay interest on the amount of money used. A disadvantage is that you do have a temptation to spend and it fluctuates with interest rates. So same as the home equity line of credit, personal unsecured lines of credits and also your home equity line of credit they do fluctuate with the Bank of Canada prime rate. So you just need to make sure that, you're crunching your numbers in terms of, the what if statement if interest rates go up again, or if they go down again, what happens? Obviously then you spend less interest. Okay. The third is a debt consolidation loan. So this is a loan which is secured or unsecured and is issued by banks, credit unions, and finance companies. Your interest rate is determined by your credit score and if you have collateral to support the loan. So some of the advantages is that it will take all of your loans and consolidate it into one monthly fixed payment, which will simplify your finances for a lot of people. So some of the, some of the issues that we have seen before is that people come in and they might have 5 or 6 different debts and they're just so stressed out with all of these debts already that it's just easier to have them all simplified into one debt where they're like, okay, I know every month I'm just going to spend $800 and it's all going to go into this debt consolidation loan. Some of the disadvantages is that it could be easy to rack up other debt on your other loans if your balance is at zero. We've already talked about this. It could take longer to pay off debts, and sometimes these do come with very high interest rates. So once again, very important that you do your research, you crunch your numbers, and you make sure that this works with your personal situation. The fourth is a 0% credit card interest or a balance transfer credit card. Now, some of the advantages of this, if you do this properly, is that it will save you money and interest. And it offered basically some of these cards will offer you a promotional period of 0% or very low interest. So I'm going to show you an example of one in a second, but obviously the disadvantages is that there is often a fee, which can be anywhere between, I've seen, usually around 2 to 3% of a transfer fee for you to take your money from an old credit card and pay it off with this new balance transfer card. There usually is like a 2 or 3% fee to do so. And when that promotion is over, the interest rate can sometimes go above and beyond the interest rate that you had on that first credit card. So you just also need to be very mindful of this, right? But if you are putting a plan together in place, this could be a very strategic way to kind of alleviate some of those interest charges for however that promotional rate is. This is an example of an MBNA Trueline credit card. I think this is from last year. They had, their standard interest rate of 12%, 13%, which is actually quite low, but they had a promotional period where clients who signed up for this could get a 0% promotional interest rate for 10 months on balance transfers. So if they gave you, a $10,000 credit limit at 0% and you had a $10,000 balance on a BMO credit card, you could pay off that you were paying 20% on. You could pay off your $10,000 BMO card at 20% with your 0% promotional interest rate. This MBNA card on the BMO card, you're not paying interest for 10 months on this MBNA card, and so you could pay off the principal faster, right? This is a very simple calculation, obviously, on how we do this, but this is a great short-term strategy if you have a long-term plan. So this would be where you work with a SISIP financial advisor, you take a look at, your cash flow and your budget, make sure that you're putting in your calendar when that promotional plan is over, what happens in the event of X, Y, and Z, but these could be really great strategies for you to use. And then the fifth type of debt consolidation, we're going to talk about our debt repayment programs. So these would be something like a consumer proposal or debt management program. These types of programs should be used as a last resort. This is a legally binding contract with your Bankruptcy Insolvency Act. You settle your debts with your creditors for less than what you actually owe. This is going to basically freeze interest rates and help you to avoid bankruptcy. Your debt payments are going to be consolidated into one affordable monthly payment, and you will receive immediate protection from creditors. However, this will negatively affect your credit score, and it doesn't cover secured debts like your mortgage or your car loan, right? Or sorry, it doesn't student debts and government debts. So it won't cover any secured debts. It'll only cover your credit card and your personal line of credit debts. So, but that is another way, obviously, to go the debt consolidation route if none of the other four that we had discussed previously would work for you. This is what I don't want you to do if you get one of these credit vehicles, right? What we don't want you to do is go out and buy a new TV set or a new fancy car or like really lush furniture, right? Or even go on vacation, right? Because when you have debt, you want to get rid of it. In that time frame that you are trying to get rid of your debt, you should be changing your lifestyle a little bit. I'm not saying forever, but there should be a little bit of a lifestyle shift so that you can properly focus on that financial goal, which should be to get rid of your debt if you are very, empowered to do so. The fifth thing we're going to talk about today is when you are going through your debt elimination is to use either the debt avalanche or the debt snowball method. So once you have gone through to figure out whether debt consolidation will work for you, you should have an idea and a kind of a framework of the amount of debts that you have left available, right? So let's talk about the debt avalanche method and what that is. This is a method where you're going to organize your debts so that you focus on the highest interest rate debt first. Then what you're going to do is you're going to designate a portion of your income to pay down your debts. And you're going to make minimum payments only on the other debt. So you're going to focus on one debt at a time, and that debt is going to be the highest interest rate debt first. You're going to make your minimum payments on all of the other debts. I'll show you an example in a second. Once the highest interest rate debt has been paid off, you're going to take those payments that you were putting towards that priority debt, and then you're going to apply it to the next highest interest rate. And basically, you're going to do this until all of the debts are paid off. Now, the advantages of this is that it's going to minimize the amount of interest paid, and it will reduce the amount of time to get out of debt. And a disadvantage is that it's going to take discipline and commitment, and it can be really frustrating because for whatever reason, when people have high interest rate debt, it can typically also, and I don't know why, but it can typically also come with the highest balance on your card sometimes. So it will take a little bit longer to get rid of that debt once and for all. So let's say I've gone, and this is just an example. We have a net worth statement, which all of you should write out at some point, like what is your net worth and what kind of interest are you making on your paying on your debts, and what are you making on any investments or your deposit accounts or anything else like this. But in this example, I have committed, I've gone through my budget, I've cut back on my expenses as much as I possibly can, and I'm saying to myself, I'm going to commit $700 a month towards my debts. Now, I've listed out on here what my priority debts are if I'm using the debt avalanche method. So, and in this case, we're not looking at secured debts. Like we're not looking at those debts where we just have monthly payments on them. We just want to focus on the revolving debts, right? So that would be your credit cards and your personal lines of credits. So in this case, my PC Financial MasterCard has a high interest rate of 19.99%, but it also has the highest balance of $7,600. So what I'm going to focus on first. Now, I took all of my credit card statements and I found out what the minimum payment that I need to make on those statements are. I would suggest, just for the sake of your credit score, is if you can pay a couple extra dollars on top of your minimum payments, it will help with your credit score. But in this example, we just use the basic minimum payment. So this is from my credit card statements and my lines of credit statements. This is how much I'm putting against these on a monthly basis. And whatever's left over from that $700, I'm then going to apply the $205.75 a month to my PC Financial MasterCard. When you are using these examples and when you are using these forms of debt reduction, I highly, highly, highly suggest not using your lines of credits and your credit cards, right? Because the last thing that you want to do is just continue to build debt on these debt vehicles. So whenever you can, use cash. And then just, if you got to freeze your credit cards, if you've got to, do it, hide them, get your partner or your kids to hide them around the house or something, but you don't want to use these as much as you were before, because we just want to focus on getting rid of the debt. So if I'm consistently going to be putting $205.75 a month onto that PC Financial MasterCard, I haven't put any more money on any of these cards at all or these lines of credits, and I wipe that PC Financial card, the balance is at zero. What I'm then going to do is I'm going to take that $205.75 a month, and I'm then going to put it onto the BMO World Elite MasterCard at 30, because that's my second priority debt, right? So I'm going to take that $205, I'm going to add it to the $72.46 a month, and I'm going to commit to putting the $277 and whatever cents a month onto that BMO Elite MasterCard until that's gone, and then I'm going to take that amount of money and then put it on my priority debt. So once you get down to here, you're actually putting $700 a month onto your personal line of credit. So, and that's that avalanche effect, right? Because you're starting with the highest interest rate and going to the lowest. And this is also where you can start to use that debt crusher tool again, right? And you can see how much of an impact by putting monthly payments on your debts it's going to have on your overall, on the overall effect of all of your debts. So let's talk about the debt snowball method. This is where you focus on the smallest debt first, and you're going to designate a portion of your income to pay down your debt. So it's very similar to what the debt avalanche method is, but you actually focus on the smallest debt first. So the advantages of this is where a lot of people are more motivated to keep going when a debt is paid off, because if you're focused on the smallest debt first, it could be that you have a credit card debt of $1,000, right? Or you have $400 or even $4,000 on a credit card. It's a lot easier to pay off smaller debts and feel that motivation. Remember, we were talking about that positive motivation before. This is where that's going to come in. And it can seem more manageable to pay down debt when there are fewer of them. So with disadvantages, you do end up spending a little bit more money in interest payments. So let's take a look at that same commitment, but using the debt snowball method. So there's not really a ton that's going to change here. The biggest thing that's going to change is that we are going to now focus instead on our BMO World Elite MasterCard. We're going to make our regular minimum payments on everything else, and then we're going to take whatever's left over and apply it to that first priority debt here, right? So same thing after this. Once our BMO World Elite card is paid off in full, it's sitting at zero. We're going to take that $125.63 a month, and we're going to add it onto the $152.58 a month, and we're going to just keep you're going to put your $177 a month, or sorry, $277 a month and whatever cents on your PC MasterCard. And then by the end, again, you're going to be putting your $700 a month in here. So the key to these different methods is that you're really just focusing on one debt at a time. And that's what I would suggest doing for anybody who does have some debt, because it can be overwhelming if you're trying to juggle, 4 or 5 different debts. Just really focus on one debt at a time. If you ever have a month at work where maybe you got an extra paycheck because, however you get paid, you've got, I don't know, extra money coming in as a gift or an inheritance, you could just focus it all on that one debt at a time, right? So same thing here. This is where it's going to be really crucial for you to use that debt crusher tool in your SISIP financial portal. So that is everything there. So for all of you who are here today, we do have a couple of QR codes. On the left, you can sign up for the free educational portal in partnership with Enriched Academy. What's really cool in here is that we have a number of mandatory courses for you to go through. We've been receiving some really great feedback from CAF members, and they're loving the education that Enriched Academy has been providing. And we want you to get engaged with that education as well. And it is there for you absolutely free. Now, the second thing is we highly suggest that you register and you scan on the right-hand side to book an appointment with a SISIP advisor to support you through your debt management. So you all have access to your SISIP advisors. And if you scan that QR code on the right-hand side, you will be connected to a SISIP advisor, and you can connect with them to really take what you've learned today and put it into action with one of those SISIP advisors. So QR code on the left is to sign up for the educational portal, and the QR code on the right, the blue one, is where you can scan to connect with a SISIP advisor and really take what you've learned today and put it into action with the help of one of the SISIP financial advisors. Okay, NJ, do we have any questions? Looks like we have some time left, I think. But is there any questions from anybody? Just gonna exit out of here.
None that I have seen so far. Lots about, how to access the portal and whatnot. So I've posted the links. It's not the QR codes don't always work for everybody. So yes, if you register for our educational program. Sorry, just realizing my mic is all the way over here. So can you hear me now? Shall I do the ASMR? If you would like to register for the Enriched Academy portal, please click on the link in the chat or use the QR code. We will usually get you within our system, generally even on the same business day, but sometimes it can take a business day or 2 business days. You will get an email with your login details so you can access it right away. Just a quick note, the first time you access the portal, before you can get to all the tools, there's like a mini financial assessment quiz. Don't panic. It's not stressful. You will not be marked on it. It's just for you to get a sense of what your financial education level is so that when you're working through the course, you are able to kind of compare and contrast. What tools do you suggest for creating the monthly budget? That's a fabulous question. Alana, would you like to answer?
Yeah. You could actually ask this. I would suggest actually first asking the SISIP advisors to see if they have any that they have available to you. That's where I would start first. If not, I mean, sometimes I would just like pen and paper. Honestly, like there's some Excel templates. You could Google a budget tracker. Some financial institutions also, I don't know who everybody banks with, but there are some financial institutions that actually do, they track spending. So you can go in and you can actually see how much you have been spending in different categories over the last couple of months. So that might be the easiest way to go about doing it. But I'd first start with maybe that SISIP advisor and seeing if they have any. They probably have some worksheets and tools, I would assume.
I believe that recently we received the Excel version of the SISIP budget.
You're
right. We were able to upload it to our
portal.
So once you're registered in our portal and you go to the tools, it will be there along with the net worth tracker that you mentioned earlier and all kinds of other like savings and RRSP calculators and MER calculators and all kinds of fun stuff.
Yeah. So once you, yes, that's right. Trisha said there's a budget worksheet on the CFMWS website under SISIP. It's helpful because it has the same breakdown as the CAF.
As the CAF pay, yeah.
So I figured,
and I think that's the one that we have in the portal, so that's great.
Oh yeah, awesome. Yeah. So that would be, honestly, for anybody who needs to get rid of their debt, the first thing I would say is like go through a budget and just see where your spending is going. Because I would say 90% of people that we have seen who, come in who have debt have just never really looked at where they spend their money. And that's usually the first step. It can be a scary step, but it's a crucial step to go through.
It's the scariest step of the budget.
Yeah, it's the scariest step because you have to come to terms with like, what are your spending habits like, right? And that's hard for a lot of people to do because they don't want to give up the lifestyle that they have. And you might not need to give up the lifestyle that you have, right? It might just be you live the same lifestyle, but you just call some of your providers and see if they have any better solutions or any cheaper, mortgage refinances or anything else like that. But use those SISIP advisors. They're there for you to help. So make sure that you sign up for your meetings with them. Anything else, NJ? I don't see anything here. I'm just looking at the meeting chat, but
not seeing. Oh, there is one coming up. There we go. If the interest is less than 7%, don't worry about paying it off. Use the money to invest instead. So I'm just reading through Captain Grant's message here.
Interesting.
Okay, so this is the loaded question, but it's a good question. So,
Yes.
Grant, I believe your name is.
Captain Grant.
Grant. Captain Grant. Fidelity will probably tell you that because they make money off of your investments, which is fine. There's a couple of stipulations with this, and the first one is going to be basically what your asset allocation is and what kind of investments are your how is your money invested, right? So a 7% interest is actually quite high, I would say. Like if you looked at a growth portfolio from the returns of a growth portfolio since 1934 on average are around, I think it's 9.6% for a growth portfolio. So if you are in a position where you are a growth portfolio, you're a 100% equity portfolio, then it might make sense for you to invest rather than pay off the interest on a 7% loan. Now, in saying that, when we talk about making 7% annually, that is typically, that 7% is usually with, it's growth, obviously, but that's also including any compounding interest that has been happening through dividend investing or anything like that. Whereas if you pay a 7% annual percentage rate on a line of credit or a credit card, your interest is actually a lot higher than that because your real percentage rate is going to be with that compound interest factor above and beyond that as well, right? So your 7% interest rate, your real interest rate might actually be closer to 8.5%, 9% by the time you're done. So it's really dependent on a number of things. I wouldn't suggest if you are in a conservative portfolio and that conservative portfolio is in a non-registered account where you have to pay taxes on it, like capital gains, and you're in a high tax bracket, like there's a lot of different things that your SISIP advisors can help you kind of work through. But it's very dependent also on, it's going to be dependent on your tax bracket. It's going to be dependent, is the money you're investing, is it in a TFSA? Is it in a tax sheltered account? Because if Fidelity can, assure that they're going to make you 7% over here, but that's a 7% annual return, but you're paying a line of credit at 7% over here, which is not actually showing you your real interest rate because they don't take the compounding interest factor and add that into your annual percentage rate, then you're losing money on your investments, especially if your investments are sitting in non-registered accounts, right? Because you're going to have to pay tax on any dividend income that comes out. There's capital gains at the end of the day. So loaded question, good question. I can't recommend anything because I don't know your situation, but this is where your SISIP advisors would come into. Yes, exactly. So Trisha says, I would argue the 7% investment is not guaranteed, but debt repayment is a guaranteed after-tax equivalent return if the rate of interest you are paying. Yes, exactly. So sign up with your SISIP advisors because that is what they are there to answer those kinds of questions. No, it was not.
We like those. No, we like the ones that have depth to them.
I'm not. No, sorry, I didn't. No, it's a loaded question because there's so many different components to it. It is a great question. It's just there's a lot more to that than do this, than that, because and like we said in the beginning, every situation is specific to your finances, and I just don't know enough about you. But this is where those SISIP advisors can do a little bit more digging and figure out, what tax bracket are you in? Do you have TFSA room available? What's your cash flow like? Like they can do a lot more digging into that situation. But you had a lot. It was a really great question. So thank you for answering that. I love those kinds of questions.
Is there anything else we can help you with? Great. Sergeant Suter, very nice. Yes, I hope this is what I appreciate about financial advisors like the people at SISIP is you can really come in to see them where you are in your own process, right? So you may have a more complex situation or you may have like a very clear-cut question that could be considered simple to other people, but for you it's very specific and important. They'll meet you where you are and ensure you get the support you need based on the level that you're at. Anything else you want to add, Elena?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, I think we're done. I think we're done for the day.
Cool.
Delightful. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. I'll throw
Thank you,
my
everybody.
email in the chat just in case, because I know it says I'm Heather, but it's actually I'm not. I've lied to you this whole time. My colleague Heather wasn't able to log in, so I have logged in. My name is Natalie Joy. I'm the academic director here at Enriched. So if you have any questions about the presentation or you want access to links or whatever, don't hesitate to reach out. Okay,
Thanks,
great.
everybody.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.